Hi, and welcome to the ESOP Evangelist Show. This is Patty Plew from Excel Legacy Group. And today, as our guest, we have Caldero from Project Ownership. Now, Haydee has been on our show before, and that is when she was working with Crepes a Latte as the Chief Operating Officer. So, what we're going to do today is do a little bit of recap on Haydée's history with ESOPs, including her time at Crepes a Latte and what she's doing today. So, what I'm going to do is, Haydee, I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit about your history with ESOPs, how you got started, your time at Crepes a Latte, and what you're doing today.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Patty, for having me on today's show. I appreciate being invited. And yes, I'll speak a little bit about my prior experience. I've been in financial services for approximately 20 years, first in the institutional level, and then I started working with middle market companies, advising founders and family-run businesses on challenges like succession planning. I was able to work with a company called Crepes a Latte on their succession plan. And after really thinking through the various options, the founders of the company decided to explore employee ownership and eventually transitioned the company to 100% employee owned in 2018. I helped lead that transition from transaction to integrating employee ownership into the employee culture, as well as just uh, annual regulatory and financial oversight of the company as an employee stock ownership plan. And I was there for almost 7 years. And after becoming more involved in the world of employee ownership, including supporting the National Center of Employee Ownership as a board director, I decided that I wanted to focus my career on helping grow more successful ESOPs and employee-owned companies. So that's what we do at Project Ownership. We help employee-owned companies really lay out a deliberate employee ownership roadmap to achieve the goals of their employee ownership. For the reason for becoming employee owned, often it includes succession, often it includes empowering shareholders and giving them the tools to really support the long-term growth of the company, and most importantly, accelerating the shareholder value to help drive that wealth building for all employees.
That's wonderful. So, tell me a little bit about is it the ESOP Ownership Network? Did I say that right?
National Center for Employee Ownership.
Thank you. I didn't think I had it right. Thank you.
Easy, often we say NCEO.
Okay. Tell
Yeah.
me a little.
So National Center for Employee Ownership has been around for several decades, and it's committed to helping and being a resource for all forms of employee ownership. So that can include ESOPs, that can include workers' co-ops, that can include employee ownership trusts, and even sometimes just management and employee stock incentive plans. And really what they are advocating for is for more broad-based employee ownership and supporting companies that are employee owned by providing great training resources, research, and other best in class tools for sharing knowledge across the employee owned community.
So, tell me the difference between the different types of employee owned, like a co-op versus an ESOP versus the other succession planning vehicles out there that include employee ownership. And what
Yeah.
one do you feel has the best benefits? I have an opinion on that, but I'd like yours
Yeah.
as well, being in the.
And I'd say that they all like, well, from a So everybody's most familiar with an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan.
Yes.
The benefits for that is that really a trust purchases the company, the shares of the company, and holds them. And then eligible employees become indirect beneficiaries of the trust, and they receive economic rewards every year through a shareholder certificate. They don't run the company, the employees, they're just benefit financially from the company's share price. And as it grows, they are able to receive shares and without having to put any money down for it. So they earn those shares by being employees, eligible employees. The benefits of that, one of the primary benefits is really the tax advantages of a sale and ongoing operations of an ESOP. If it's an S Corp, it pays no taxes. And if it's a C Corp, it is able to deduct the cost of the plan compensation, basically the distributions every year. The other benefits for it is that it's a very structured plan, and there's over 6,000 privately held companies that are ESOPs. And so there's just a lot of tools from a very large group of professional advisors who are comfortable and familiar with ESOPs that can advise companies. There's a lot of history of transaction structure. Banks are a little bit more familiar with it, and such that while we still need to grow employee ownership, you're more likely to have people who understand that structure if you decide to convert. Another form of employee ownerships are worker co-ops. Now, worker co-ops have been around. There's so many different types of co-ops, but a worker co-op is typically when the workers now own the company. Typically, they have to invest a small amount of capital. It could be $500, it could be $1,000. And the co-op comes together and decides the rules of so the workers decide not only the rules of governance, but also the allocation of profits, right? So it's a much more democratic system where, unlike in an ESOP, the workers are indirect owners. In a workers co-op, the workers that are eligible are direct owners and can have a say in major decisions. That's really effectuated by the rules that they place on themselves when they form the co-op.
So is there tax advantages to the co-op like there is to the ESOP?
No. And generally what's been found, and there are very large co-ops, especially in Europe. But in the United States, most co-ops have generally tended to be smaller companies with under 50 employees.
Okay.
Then the other form is employee ownership trust. Now, once again, employee ownership trust is the main form of employee ownership in the United Kingdom. And so some of the best practices from the other side of the pond have come over to the United States and are being slowly implemented. So once again, a trust owns the company. There are no tax benefits, but it's a simpler plan. So an ESOP is regulated by the Department of Labor under ERISA as a pension plan.
Okay.
And not necessarily a pension plan, but a defined benefit plan, and as thus is highly regulated. An employee ownership trust does not have that level of regulation. Typically, when the trust is being formulated, it's given a mission. Many times that mission is that the company is run and managed for the benefit of employees. And thus, the board has to follow that mandate in regards to its decisions as well as management. But one of the reasons why people do employee ownership trust is because there's much less regulation, and as such, they feel more comfortable with that structure. It's also less expensive, but once again, it doesn't have the same benefits from a tax perspective as an ESOP. That is a relatively new field, so the number of transactions are not as easily countable in terms of how large that Okay. Regarding EOTs, employee ownership trusts, that's a relatively newer field of employee ownership in the United States, and they're still not as large of a network of companies. But from what I've been told from many advisors in the space, it's growing in popularity.
So I read an article about BMO Harris.
Hmm.
BMO Harris is the Bank of Montreal, Canada.
Hmm.
And because of BMO Harris being so actively involved in ESOPs, or this is what the article said anyway, that they're really trying to implement them or advocate to implement the same benefits in Canada that the ESOPs have in the United States. Do you know anything about that?
Actually, I was just updated by someone who's working on that cause a couple days ago, and they've made real headway to getting a ability to do transactions valued at under 10 million Canadian dollars
That's
in terms
wonderful.
of offering the same tax benefits that's offered to ESOPs of all values in the United States.
That's that's wonderful. I know that they were working on it. The our corporate banker when we created our ESOP was BMO Harris. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, they're
mhm.
a great team. The BMO ESOP team is one of my favorites.
Yes, yep, I agree. So you had also stated that there's a employee ownership network in Illinois that I believe that you're involved in.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, the mission of the Employee Ownership Center in Illinois, which is part of 21 other centers nationwide under the Employee Ownership Expansion Network um, umbrella, is to grow the number of employee-owned companies in Illinois by building support for employee ownership at the local level.
Yeah, there's one there. Didn't you say that they're just funding one in Wisconsin as well?
Yes,
They've
the
just been
Wisconsin
funded?
one started like late last year.
Yes.
Got off the ground, and it seems like it's making inroads in that space.
So ESOPs are finally becoming more popular. They've been around forever. Since the 1950s was the
Ye-
first one?
They've been around for many, many years. There are ESOPs that are over 40 years old, and are still in perpetuity. There are ESOPs that are over $1 billion in revenue, with thousands of employees in global operations. The reason why, um, there's two reasons that have really uh, minimized the ability for the community to grow. Uh, One has been awareness of this form of ownership in regards to this is how a business owner can transition their business. Just does not have the awareness level that selling to a competitor or selling to a financial buyer has had. And second, there has been access to capital concerns in regards to there not being a ready available pool of capital to finance transactions, and requires owners to be a little bit more creative in how deals get done. Um, I would say on the flip side, sometimes the reason the community has not grown is it's actually the ESOPs have become too successful, and they actually get acquired by a competitor. So there has
Yeah.
been a number of ESOPs every year that we lose primarily because of acquisitions.
And I know when we created our ESOP in 2020, there was 7,200, I believe, and you said now there's 6,000. Now, one of
Mm-hmm.
them that was acquired was Cliff Bar.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Cliff Bar was acquired, and they were an ESOP, I think, since 2010, and then acquired in 2022 by an international snack company. The name escapes me right now, and I also have uh, the first client that I closed their ESOP. She had been a part of an ESOP when she was young. that was acquired. And because she was part of the ESOP, she was paid out as an owner, started her own company. And what I didn't know when we closed her, until we closed her ESOP, was that her goal was to accelerate the growth of her company because she had minority workers. I believe there was 125 women workers that worked for her, and she was going to accelerate the growth of her business and then be acquired herself. She could pay it forward for all those minority workers to experience the same thing that she experienced. Because she used that money that she received from that buyout of the company she worked for to start her own business. And she wants to pay it forward and do the same thing for her workers.
Yeah, and convert to an ESOP as well.
Yes.
Yes, that's wonderful. And so, as you can see, when someone gets introduced to that form of ownership, it definitely creates more evangelists like yourself and I.
Absolutely. Oh, excuse me. Absolutely. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share, Haydee?
Yeah, one thing we talk a lot about in the employee ownership community is that in order to achieve the benefits of employee ownership, in regards to the types of growth that some of the companies have experienced, I think one great anecdote was a CEO who I met a couple days ago, and over a less than 10-year period, he took his company with 25 million in revenue and now has 500 million in revenue. And one of the reasons he was able to do it, it was a two-pronged approach. The first was really ensuring that there was an employee ownership culture integrated into the daily operations, and that there was accountability across all domains. So when he's made a mistake, he as CEO has had to admit those mistakes. He feels proud that there's been, at least from a share price growth, very minimal of those. And then but then second, he did an acquisition strategy. So he's creating more employee owners. But when he creates those new companies, he takes a very different approach where he purchases those companies, the holding company. He takes a very different approach than a typical strategic acquirer. He does not, he does not implement a plan after the acquisition that accounts for mass termination. He says, we bought this company because it was a good company. It had great operations, and we believed with employee ownership and an employee ownership culture, it could grow even faster. Second, he is the seller in chief of helping employees understand that he's there to create more millionaires. So he has been able to share that journey with his employees, and there are employees who have become millionaires, right? And who've really benefited from the growth of the overall enterprise and are committed and are giving the financial literacy tools, the training, and the transparent and accountable culture to support the end goals of employee ownership. So I think we talk a lot about becoming and converting into an ESOP, but one of the key differentiators from a successful ESOP to an okay ESOP are the ones that implement the best practices of employee ownership, which is empowering employees to support the long-term growth of that company.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It's truly a transfer of wealth to the people that helped you build your business, and that's what got me excited when I first heard about it.
From both from a financial perspective, but also from a empowerment perspective, right?
Exactly.
You're giving people new tools to define their futures.
I agree. Well, Haydee, thank you so much for coming back on my show.
Yeah.
And I just can't thank you enough. And I wish you the best with project ownership and
Wonderful.
making an impact in the ESOP community.
Well, thank you, Patty, and it's wonderful to always collaborate with you. And I'm excited for the work you're doing creating more ESOPs. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to working together more.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.